we go, y'all. Hello, everyone. This is Let Your Words Count.
Yo,
What's good?
good evening.
What's going on, Mike?
What's up, y'all? It's good to be back. Good to be back, gents.
Good to have you, man. Always.
Oh, yes. Once I fix this mic, we're going to go to town.
Yeah, awesome.
Good to be back. Let your words count. We letting our words count this evening.
Absolutely.
I got my pen, my paper. I'm going to take some notes. We're going to learn something.
Let's do it. You want to start off, G?
You got the definition up?
Yeah, let's toss it on there.
All right.
So what word are we doing?
Today we're doing suffering.
Suffering.
I feel like we're going to probably have a lot of disclaimers we got to give at the beginning. But we're
Man.
going to dive into suffering. And I can promise you, this is not going to be the only episode we do on suffering. We are going to have to talk about this more than one time. We're not going to be able to cover all the depths, the ins and outs of it in one shot. And we can't let where we are today say that's the final say in everything. We all have growing to do. So I'm sure we'll grow, learn more, and be able to bring better experience and better information back when we come back and hit it again, right?
Yeah.
So,
Suffering.
Yeah,
So
this is actually episode 48.
episode 48.
Episode
Let's
48.
go.
A little
Almost at
typo.
50. That's all right.
2 more away from 50. What you got up there?
47.
Sorry, people understand. So we got suffering is the state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. It can be physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. One more time. Suffering is the state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. It can be physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. You got the etymology and the derivation.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
I'll do one of them.
You want to do one?
Yeah, if you do, so if
Go
you
do
do,
Go do the etymology.
etymology.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do it. All right, the etymology of the word suffering is from the Latin. I'm gonna try this. Suffer,
Yeah, there you go.
meaning to bear or endure. From the sub, under, and fare, to carry. It originally referred to the act of carrying or enduring hardship rather than avoiding it. I like that. I really like that. That's kind of the vibe that I was feeling when y'all told me what the word was. Exactly that, the act of carrying rather than avoiding. But go ahead, E.
No worries. Good stuff. All right, so we're going to do and tackle the emotional lens. So the emotional lens for suffering is the feeling, the positive, the negative side. So the positive is growth, empathy, resilience, awakening. The negative side, which typically is the normal side that people think of suffering, is the pain, loss, despair, isolation. And why? What's the purpose of this? Suffering often feels overwhelmingly negative, but it can also lead to depth, healing, and connection if we learn from it rather than resist it. It's powerful.
Do these this breakdown it comes from like AI, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so glad that you put it up for this particular word specifically because I had these thoughts in my mind, like the part where it says it can also lead to depth, healing, and connection if we learn from it rather than resist it.
Yep.
That was exactly what I was thinking. Like, okay, how do we approach the word suffering and simultaneously share that it's better to embrace it when it comes, and in fact, sometimes approach it as opposed to just embracing it when it comes to you. And I'm glad that it put this here because it frames it in a light where I feel like it's going to be easier to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's good.
Yeah. What I like about it is sometimes I like to use AI with certain things because they will look at two sides of a thing, and you can and I think we've trained it. Like when we were doing our Let Your Words Count template, we basically trained the template in some type of way to look at two sides. You know what I'm saying? That's a good thing about AI. Sometimes once you've dealt with it and you train it to grasp a in-depth look of the word.
Yeah.
And when they're able to deliver that to you, you can kind of speak on it a little bit further. Man.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah,
100%,
I love that.
100%. Yep. What's on your mind, G?
It's a couple things, man, to start it off, because I almost feel like, and again, I'm saying like a lot of disclaimers, but part of me is like wants to say this is not to tell somebody what to do. And it's maybe less about the physical aspect of suffering or the physical things that one may suffer. That can, whether it's physical or not, the part of you that has to kind of deal with it or that can change it from being something negative to positive is how you think about the suffering. It's more the mental, emotional, spiritual aspect of it that words can help. You know, it's not that a word or a podcast is going to relieve physical suffering, right? And we're not medical doctors. We're not here to try to give anybody any kind of, snake oil cures or anything like that. This is more about the mindset when you're going through suffering, and not that we can do anything to really stop physical suffering when it happens. It's a natural part of being a human being, but the way we process it in our minds, the way we deal with it after, the way we let it settle in, the way we choose to go through it and what we choose to pull from that experience, that's what words and talking about it can help address. It's not going to relieve any kind of physical pain. So I don't want our approach to this to be something that somebody feels lessens or minimizes pain that they're going through, right? But this is us trying to help you figure out how to heal and how to take something positive out of it when you inevitably go through some kind of suffering.
Very good.
Right?
Very good. Yeah. Mike, you had something else you've been thinking about? No pressure, bro.
No, I have thoughts, but G added another layer that I hadn't really considered. So my initial thought when you sent me the word was everything but physical suffering. Disease in the body, disease in the mind, and things like that were something that didn't even cross my mind. It was more about the sufferings or the growing pains of life.
Yes.
is kind of where my mind went. But you bringing that particular point of making sure that any mention we make that may include physical suffering is not intended to minimize anybody's experience is a really good point. I think that with physical suffering, emotional suffering, mental suffering, I think that perspective shapes reality to a great degree.
Yes, it does. Absolutely right.
I've come across, people that I know personally who have had hard experiences or difficult challenges with their physical body. And even though, person A and person B may be experiencing the same thing in terms of their physical condition, I find that there are those who have a perspective of what they're dealing with that might lend to, that suffering being something that can still be spun into a positive experience. Absolutely. On some level. Yes. Obviously, suffering physically is hard no matter what your outlook is. If you are a sunshine and rainbows kind of person, if you're hurting, you're hurting.
That's right.
I think that it's really, really, really important to focus as much as possible on whatever kind of suffering that we're dealing with or that we end up talking about. That perspective is such a big part of how that experience will play out for you. That's kind of what's on my mind right now. I don't really have a long laundry list of things to say at the moment. But just to kind of come out of the gate with it, that's where my head is.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I think you had a thought, E?
No, go ahead.
I think it's important because, just to kind of finish off what we were talking about on that, it's like, I realize that as we talk about, and again, our point, our whole intent behind doing this show is to try to equip people, right? To try to, prepare people for things you're going to go through and the way you can try to approach or go through certain situations in life and come out on top. But I also know that there's times when anybody approaching something like that with you can sound like it's just get over it, or do better, or, just change, you know what I mean? And just like, and again, we don't ever intend to minimize what somebody is going through or how it's affected them or whatever. And we don't want it to seem like we're saying, just get better, just do better, because I think people a lot of times are doing the best they can. And if you see somebody falling short of what you think they can do, the way to approach that is not just to say, well, do better. If they're doing what they think is their maximum, and you maybe see more potential in them, sometimes it's good to kind of go and talk to that person and walk them through, well, this is how. And this is what we intend to do with this show, is not just say do better. This is the how. This is the, okay, you're going through this hard thing. And like you said, we've all gone through, you can't be a human on this planet and not go through some kind of suffering in all those categories we just listed: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. It's all there. So we all have to face it. And let's try to figure out what are those steps and those ways we can, try to help and equip each other to be able to come out. And because like you said, I fully agree, it's all about perspective. You can choose, or if you don't think about it, the end result might be you coming through a period of suffering with bitterness, with anger, hatred, lost faith, all kind of different things that result from somebody going through suffering. And when you see one person go through an illness and another person goes through, like you said, they come out rainbows and sunshine after a horrible thing they've gone through. And another person comes out and they're devastated. Their mindset is different. Their relationships are different. The way that they treat themselves and having an expectation of life and pleasure. Two people can go through the exact same thing, and one person comes out on top and the other person comes out seeming defeated. And I don't think it's because it's not possible for that defeated person to come out better. It's just maybe they haven't been equipped with it. Maybe they never had anybody actually sit there and take the time to walk them through that. You have to make a choice. You have to make a choice on what do you want the outcome to be once this suffering is past you. Do you want it to let it just beat you down and let you be changed for the negative? Or do you want to try to see if there is a way you can figure out how to make suffering work in your favor? Not that it's a positive and a great thing while you're going through it, but if there is a way you can look at suffering as a teacher and as a mirror, you can make a choice, a conscious choice to try to find something positive to take out of this negative situation that we're going to all go through. I'd much rather, if I know I got to go through something negative, I'd rather choose to come out with something useful out of that experience than to just go through a negative experience and then come out with a negative mindset forever because of that one bad thing I went through. So that's kind of what we're trying to build up, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength, bro. 2 seconds before you said the word choice, I wrote it down because I was getting ready to circle back with you and be like, okay, so my question is, and you touched on it, but I'd like to kind of maybe expound if we can.
Sure.
My question is, to what degree and I know what I think, and I'm happy to share that, but I'd like to get your thoughts. To what degree are we realizing, or maybe that's too certain of a word, to what degree do we consider a person's suffering a choice? And I don't mean suffering in terms of, like we were talking about physical ailments. The suffering from a physical ailment can cause that emotional stress, that emotional suffering. Spiritual, mental, other sufferings can spew from that. Yes. Just because if we consider that your perspective is a choice, you know what I mean? You choose to view it however you do. In each moment we choose. Right. So my question to you would be, if we're addressing the kind of situation where a person has, like you used a phrase that made me write down the word choice. You used a phrase that said somebody might be doing the best that they can. I have to play devil's advocate on that one a little bit, because the best that you can is based on, number one, what you know so far, and then number two, the choices that you make with whatever knowledge that you have. And so the best that you can is almost never really the best that you can. Absolutely, you know what I'm saying? You always can do a little bit. So my question then is if we're approaching a situation with grace, because we're seeing somebody suffer, that may not. that may not have made that choice to see it a certain way, or maybe
Right.
they have never been informed that it is a choice. Who knows?
Right.
But if you're approaching that and and I'm speaking specifically about you, or and both of you actually, how would you approach it? If you're approaching that with grace, what would your instruction be? What would your admonishment be, or encouragement, or however whatever word you want to use?
And I think it'd be Ethan. You have something you want to jump in with?
Still thinking it through.
Okay. So I would think, because I think, and again, one of the things that I try to accumulate, I guess if that's the right word to use, if I'm suffering or going through something, is compassion. That the thing that you're going through, and you think about whether it's something painful, like you said, physically or non, and then think about where I am in my mindset, and then how am I doing? How would I grade myself and how I'm going through that thing?
Wait, say that again.
How you grade yourself?
How I grade myself, right? If I'm suffering through something, am I getting discouraged? Am I getting angry?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Am I resenting the situation?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So to me, I'm looking at it like, first thing I want to try to do is let compassion grow. That if somebody else were going through this thing, I can remember what it feels like to be down, to be in a bad spot, and let that instill compassion in me when I come across somebody else that's suffering. And then when I come across somebody who I think has the potential to do better, not to just approach them in this lectury, preachy kind of just do better kind of thing and walk away. You know what I mean? Because I've seen that, I've had that done to me, and I've done it to others plenty of times, I'm sure, right? So, but in my learning and my trying to grow and evolve, I don't want to do that anymore. So to your point, I would sit down with the person and say, and ask them a series of questions like that too. Like one of the things that I think is the most important thing to do, because you said, like, you can't control physical suffering. To what degree can we kind of control how we're going through these other things? I think that suffering also provides you this opportunity of holding a mirror up to yourself. Because, and this is how I think I would approach a person is, if I understand what it is you're going through, let's understand how you're feeling as a result of what you're going through. Are you hurting? Do you feel like you're being punished? Do you feel like this is deserved in some way? Are you discouraged? Would you be discouraged coming out of this, that things can't get better for you? I would want to understand some of those things and try to walk them through, okay, you've done this, and in a non-insulting way say, I think you have the potential, or with embracing the right mindset, you can go farther than that. You know what I mean? But try to be there to help walk them through. And if you see the potential in them to do better, don't just assume they know what those steps are. If you have the time and the energy and the compassion to try to walk them through, I've been in this situation, this is how, and I used to handle it bad, this is how I started to handle some of those sufferings better than what I used to, you know what I mean? And try to help walk them through what that process might be.
So yours would start off with a conversation that looks like just compelling them to be a little more honest about where their mindset is?
I think one of the most important things, and one of the biggest and most important first questions you have to ask when it comes to somebody that's suffering is helping them understand, because a lot of people will take the why me response. And instead of asking why me, I'm going through it, it's here. Understanding why might not matter, but I can decide what I can take from this situation. So instead of why me, what can I take out of this situation when I'm done? So I think a person asking the questions, why is this thing that I'm going through difficult or painful in whatever way it is? Why is it taking something away? The words we looked up earlier with the negative mindset, isolation, desperation, depression, all these negative things that can come along with suffering. I think it's important that a person sits down and is honest with themselves about what they're feeling, and then try to understand why they're feeling those things. Part of what we're trying to build up with this series too is looking at the two big polar opposite kind of sides in a lot of different words and things we go through, is the love and the fear aspect. And when you look at the fear aspect, fear manifests in a lot of different ways. And it's not always just, we were talking about this the other day, not always just, fear of divine wrath or fear of loss of life. It can be fear of, I was poor, I don't want to be poor again. It could be fear of being homeless. It could be fear of losing a loved one. It could be fear of losing a relationship. That the things that we might not look at and think of fear as the first emotion, but a lot of times that's one of the underlying things. So if we're going through and suffering something, I think one of the most important things a person has to ask is, why is this hard for me? And then when you look at why it's hard for you, understand why are those things that you're going through, that you're feeling, difficult for you, and how much of that is in your control or not. If I'm suffering because I don't have as much money as maybe I want, I just use that because that's one thing I think people can always kind of relate to. And I'm suffering through that, and I ask, okay, well, why does this feel like this is difficult? Well, because I don't have as much money as I want to. Okay, and if you had that money, you would do what with it? Well, maybe it's just putting up for a nest egg. So nothing that you need, just asking, kind of going through those steps of what makes this thing difficult for you, and can you kind of get down into each element, take it as far down as you can to understand what is it that's at the root of this thing you're going through that's making it difficult, and how much of you can you adjust to be less impacted by that in the future. Wow. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Yes. I know it's a lot.
Yeah, it does.
No, that's good.
It does. That was well said.
Yeah, to go to think about what you were saying, Mike. You were saying that what degree are we considering suffering a choice? I think that's a powerful question to ask, because I think that's a valuable question to ask someone that is impacted in some type of way, right? I've learned over the years to have, like what G said, more compassion over people's experience, right? And one of the things that I think about suffering is the etymology. It says to carry, right? To endure, to endure it, to bear, to endure, to carry. And so when you think about suffering and you're carrying it, it is your choice to let it go. That's what I'm saying, to drop it. It's really your choice to let it go, or how far you want to carry it, And I love the last part of it is it talks about enduring hardship rather than avoiding it, right? So I think a lot of times we've taught ourselves in society, in our lives or whatnot, what can I do to avoid this pain? Well, sometimes pain is hard to avoid. Sometimes the struggle is real, and sometimes you have to sit there in that. And in those moments, those are the times where you actually come alive. But the moments where you come alive, you avoid that moment because you don't want to feel the pain. You don't want to feel the hurt. You don't want to feel the embarrassment, because sometimes suffering is sometimes being embarrassed is a part underneath the umbrella of suffering as well. Man, I suffered it. I made the wrong choice. Man, I'm embarrassed. Now I got to walk in front of all these people and do, you know what I'm saying? That's a form of suffering. It's probably not at the highest pinnacle or summit of issues, but embarrassing can be one of those impacts in your life that can cause a lot. I know a lot of people that committed, because they were embarrassed, right? It's the way society is today. You have digital impacts that people go through via social media, through texting and different things like that cause a form of suffering, right? And so the question that you ask is very valid. I think that when do we let go? When do I realize that this is for a moment, and that's another thing is it's like, and we say it all the time, it's a traditional thing, but trouble, it doesn't last all the way. But in your mind, if you develop or condition yourself that it would never go away, as a man thinketh, so he is, right? And that is a true saying, you know what I mean? And I think that
100%.
Yeah, so I think that another note I wrote as we were doing this was this. It says, for suffering, me outside looking at somebody suffering, judgment comes when not having a clear understanding of what transpired, right? So it's we can get to a position of judgment when you don't really understand what transpired that person's suffering, right? Judgment is the easy ticket in order to say that, well, I know what goes on. No, you don't. right? Like,
Job's
don't.
friends.
You said what?
Job's friends.
Yes, I always said I never want to be Job's friends. I never. There was a thought that hit when I was dealing with someone, an issue. I told you this, G. I don't know if I told you this, Mike, but I know it was. I know it was God dealing with me. He said, "You're being Job's friend right now." A voice hit my head just like that, and I was like, "Wow." You know what I'm saying? Because you don't realize that you don't know your place. Get the mote out your own eye. If you were suffering, you have to realize and put yourself in their position and really imagine what would you do if you were in that same boat. So as you guys were talking, I really thought about that as well, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one thing that'll help with that particular thing is learning how to mind our own business. Like it sounds
100%,
really simple,
man.
but so few people mind their own business. So few, especially in the communities that we are, are conditioned to be a part of. It's not a it's not a common practice. Like, we use the excuse to
opposite.
Yeah, it's literally
Encourage do the opposite.
yeah, it's we talk a lot about look not on your own, not just on your own things, but also on the things of others. But that's looking with compassion. That's looking to see how I can help, not to just be informed of what somebody's dealing with, because that's nonsense.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to kind of maybe ask about or discuss is if a person's perspective of whatever suffering they're experiencing has driven them to despair to the degree that, they feel like maybe they don't want to be alive anymore, or they don't want to continue with the struggles of life, so much so that they've given up, even if it's not the case where they don't, particularly want to be alive. But, excuse me. But desperation is a really, really ugly thing. And when a person has reached that point, it feels almost impossible to help pull them back from that brink, so to speak, pull them away from the void. So and we've all, seen or experienced it with, people that we know, or maybe even within ourselves at certain points. And so my question is there a way this is where a disclaimer can come in. None of us sitting here at this table are licensed clinicians or therapists, or we don't have any credentials behind our names that make us qualified to necessarily approach this topic with any level of real authority other than life experience and experience with friends and family. So that's really important for us to make known and make clear. Having said that, we all have friends and family that we love and want to make sure that that they don't, fall into that trap, so to speak.
Don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. And so my question is, because if we're talking about suffering, despair is a byproduct or a result, a fruit of suffering. So if we've gotten past the point where we could have just kind of nipped it in the bud early on, shifted perspectives, learn how to, navigate life even with suffering. If we've kind of got past that point, nobody caught it or we didn't catch it, and we're at the point where we are now living in a sense of despair, or living with a sense of despair. Is there a way to approach that? If so, what are your thoughts? I don't want to make it seem like we're an authority, but what are your thoughts? And I know that's hard, so if it takes a second,
It's not that it's hard. It's it requires. First of all, that's an excellent question, and it's the right question, because the rate that people are unaliving themselves or are doing things to harm themselves, I think, has been increasing steadily. So it's definitely a valid question, because it's something that people are going through at an increasing rate, which
it definitely feels closer to home.
Yes, it does.
Yes,
it does. And the right question to ask 100%, but I think in approaching it, I don't know if I can have a singular answer that'll work for everybody.
Okay.
Because I've met as we all have, a lot of people that have been in despair for different reasons. And it takes, and this is one of my problems with, and again, some of the communities we come from, we're thinking that there's a one size fits all solution for everybody. That you can look at anybody's situation, lump it into some big category, and give them the same rehearsed routine things and walk away like your job has been done because you've said a couple of things that you were prescribed as the standard things to say, rather than sit down there, talk to the person, figure out what they're going through. Again, why is it difficult for them? What are they feeling despair about? What few things they have that they do hope for or that they can attach some kind of positive meaning to. And then from there, try to work with that person to see how do you build them back up. Because looking at a person that's in despair or depressed like that as a person that, I don't want to say broken down, but there's something going on that if they're in a low spot, they can be built up. There's room, so you hear people say, I'm rock bottom. Okay, well, if you're at rock bottom, then the good thing that means that it's easy to build something from rock bottom up. If you're at the ground level of something, it's easy to start putting blocks one on top of the other if everything's at the ground level. So if you're broken down, that means you have no lower to go. You can't do anything but be built up. And that comes back to one of, again, the few things you can control for everything you go through, because I can't control if I have a physical illness all the time or a pain condition or whatever the case is. I can control how I respond to it. So there was one person I've talked to that I remember that was, and I'm not giving any names obviously, but was in despair because they felt like they had gone through a lot of times and they had been cheated, not loved, done wrong, disrespected, hated, and on down the line. They felt like they were no good to anybody and that there was no good out in the world for them. And for that reason, they were kind of hoping that the situation, that the physical condition they were going through would take them out. And in doing so, and in listening to this person and talking to them a little bit, I heard mention of some younger family members that was in this person's life that they cared a lot for. So as they were going through all the different things that they faced and the hardships and the lies and people stealing and cheating and doing all these things to you, I'm like, you obviously didn't enjoy any of those things, right? Now, how do those younger people in your family feel? Have they experienced those things? Have they gone through the same thing? And no, they're too young. They're, still in a loving household with their parents and they haven't been out into the world to experience all those things. And my response back to him was, if these young people, obviously I hear it in your voice and the way you're talking about them, as somebody that you love, you can make a choice. Because again, I can't tell you this is your quote unquote life's purpose, but you can make a conscious choice that you're going to be the person in their lives to show them that everybody's not like that. And you're going to be the person in their lives that when anybody else does approach them in that way, you will be there as a counterbalance. That if somebody shows them love, you be there. If somebody shows them hate, you be there to show them love to counteract that. If somebody steals from them, you be there to kind of help build them up and whatever. Be there as that positive anchor in their lives that you feel you didn't have, and use that as your purpose. Use that as your drive, your reason to go on. So giving somebody some kind of purpose or goal or something like that to kind of reach on to, finding some use and purpose for themselves, I think is part of it. But again, I've had a similar conversation with a person who ended up taking their life later on. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to say there's like a one size fits all or a standard way to approach it, but those are some of the general steps I try to take, is what's driving them, what people around them. Because we talked about that before too. That's another thing that I think is important. We had this conversation, I think, in the validation episode, that if you feel like you're a person that's not loved, to me, one of the best ways to remedy that is to go find somebody else who has nothing, has nobody, and also doesn't feel loved, and you give them unconditional love. And in you giving that thing that you feel you don't have or that nobody's given to you, and you're giving unconditional love to somebody else who feels unloved and like they've never been loved and they can't trust, and you give that person that love that they're missing, they in turn start to love you back and reciprocate that to you, hopefully. And if not, that person does, go find somebody else. But in giving the thing that you feel you're lacking, you will find that comes right back to you, because you're approaching somebody else who doesn't feel love. And if I love on that person, and if I'm the only person there to love on that person, they're going to come back and return love back to your life, which is probably what you were seeking in the first place. So I think it's important to kind of be able to recognize and help work through with people what's missing in your life, what is going right in your life, and where do you see an ability or an opportunity for you to do good for someone else and try to find purpose in something like that. Right.
You know, G, you hit on something that
I feel like I'm talking so much as I'm turning
you're
my mic
good.
off.
No, you're good, man. I think you hit very, very good points, and I think what you're addressing in my mind is you're holding people accountable, rather they're suffering or they're not. I think that the words that you're speaking right now is a response that give that person not an excuse to utilize what they have to cause someone else to grow. Even if they're in the suffering or despair or whatnot, there is some type of beacon that you have that will allow somebody to grow. You will touch somebody's heart. When someone is going through despair, hardship, or harm, somebody is watching you as you are going through that. And you're going to have doubters. You're going to always have doubters, right? But it's always going to be that one audience that says that person, he fought through. There's always going to be someone that looks at the brighter side. But I think that a lot of times we, once again, didn't realize that, as we were reading these words, it seems that we seems, if the word is vacillate, if that's the right word, to the negative side, instead of looking at that there is an actual positive side to suffering if you know how to maturely approach it. When you talk about suffering from a positive side, your thinking is up here.
But even in that, I want to be clear though that the suffering in itself, it's in the word. It's a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I can choose that in this negative experience, I want to find where I can grow. I want to find what it's teaching me. I want to find what it's telling me about myself. And I want to find conscious, again, I can only control my response. I want to find something positive to take from this otherwise negative situation.
Yeah.
Negative can breed negative all day easily. I can walk away from suffering with no effort and take nothing good from it. I want to make a choice that if I'm going through something bad, I'd at least like to take something good, growth opportunity, better understanding about myself. I want to take that out of it with me. Conscious choice to take something positive out of a negative experience, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, okay, so let me try to be clear with it, right? So when you talk about the negative and positive side, I think that your action is the positive side that you can grasp from a negative, a very, very hard word. Suffering is a very, very hard word. It's a very, very hard word. And once again, it's one of those words and actions, so to speak, that people try their best to avoid. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're
but
right.
I think people try to avoid suffering, but it's weird because sometimes suffering is the thing that trauma and suffering actually makes a person alive in some type of way. And I know that sounds so weird, man, but
it's part of the experience.
It's a part. There you go. That's it. There's an experience there's a part of the experience when you encounter, that's the word I'm looking for, when you encounter hardship, a struggle. You know what I mean? Like Mike, you just said something to me earlier today that happened to you, and I'm thinking to myself like, wow, and then the brother looking at me smiling. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not getting into details or anything because I don't want to tell the brother's business or anything like that, but I think that what it is in our lives that we all encounter this. Trouble don't last always. You have to realize you have to take this moment of suffering. Despair. Let's go back to despair real quick. I feel like I'm jumping, but I do want to go back to what Mike was talking about with despair. I think with despair, I don't know if I have a full answer, like you said, a one size fit all thing with that either, but I think it's about asking the right questions while that person is enduring that hardship. I think we have to allow love to be the operation while we're generating the right questions for that person to survive in that mode or whatnot, because I don't want to see anybody lose their life or giving up just because, even it's in pain. I can be selfish with that, right? I'll admit that'll be my my selfishness. I don't want to see anybody go away. But at the same time, is that person being selfish as well? That's what I want. I would want to have the right, just as much as I'm being selfish to see them alive, are they being just as selfish to take their life? You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of like what I'm thinking. Like, here, let's have a balance here. Let me really see what's going on with these questions. Let me try to get to the root cause. You know, I was talking about this the other day about. I think you and I talk about this deeply quite a bit, G, concerning someone has to be the root of the tree.
Right.
You won't see light. But you're going to be the supplier to the tree, which gives fruit. You're going to be in the dark. Someone has to be the root that's constantly looking for water. So when that's what life is about. Sometimes people don't realize that they say that they're in despair and different things like that. And I'm not saying that they're not. Trust, believe me. I am not. There's no judgment comes to that. But what I'm saying is, going back to what you're saying, because you're a root and you find yourself fashioned as a root, you don't know how much you supply and provide to everyone else. And I think that that's a good way of looking at it. You know? At least in my mind, so right? Too. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. You was about to say something.
Yeah. So my thoughts regarding despair, and it sounded like you both kind of touched on it. To me, despair is kind of the opposite of hope.
Agree.
And if a person is experiencing despair or they found themselves desperate, you know, for life, for survival, for whatever, having hope or finding a way to inspire hope, regardless of what that looks like.
Yes.
You know, going back to the fact that there's no easy way to approach it.
Yeah, agreed.
I think to be honest, I may disagree a little bit with the one size fits all answer. Because I think that there is what could be a one size fits all answer. I just think it's probably not the approach that, you know, that you're thinking of when you say that.
Okay.
I think the approach is to find a way to inspire hope. Because like you mentioned, and you touched on it, you said, you know, find something that gives you a smile, find something that brings you, you know, peace or gives you a purpose or things like that. And those can be the building blocks, you know, of that hope.
Agree. Makes sense.
One thing that you mentioned is if a person feels neglected or like they haven't, experienced love or recognition or whatever that might be. You mentioned maybe finding someone else to give that to. I think for me, my approach would be to start to learn and understand how to give that to oneself.
That's also true. Also true. Yep.
Because it's hard, maybe impossible, for me to genuinely love any other person if I don't love myself, or to be genuinely kind from the heart, from the soul, to be kind to another person if I'm not genuinely kind to myself. If I don't treat myself with grace, it's going to be way harder, maybe impossible, I don't know, maybe impossible to offer grace to somebody else.
That makes sense.
You and I were talking recently where you kind of had an epiphany within yourself, like, you know, that how valuable the self-grace that you offer yourself is. And in that moment, when and we've all come to that conclusion at one point or another, sometimes multiple times throughout life, we come to that same conclusion because we forget, you know, we're human beings.
For sure.
We get distracted with life and things like that. But when we come to a conclusion like that, and we start to execute on it, then it's been my experience that that my relationship starts to improve across all sectors. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's because I'm a little bit brighter because of how I treat myself. And now I'm a little bit brighter and I can treat you a little bit better and so on. But anyway, I think that to me, my go-to approach, and I cannot stress enough that I am not an expert in this. There have been people that I've reached out to that have been in desperate situations, that stayed in desperate situations, even though, you know, I did what I could to try to help. Exactly. Despite my best efforts. Exactly. And so everything that I'm saying is just me speaking from the heart and not necessarily from a textbook or any mastery
Go
of,
ahead.
of the thing.
Perfect.
But yeah, my initial approach is to inspire hope.
That's good.
That's number one. And then also, I wrote down, because obviously we're talking about suffering. The perspective on suffering for me is that there's an end game, whether that's a goal that I set personally or whether it's what we would consider destiny or things like that. Whatever it is, suffering is the path to get there. Regardless of what it is, suffering is the path to get there. And this is not necessarily the physical suffering at this moment. Hardship is the path, because we hear all the time, maybe we don't take it seriously or literally, but we hear all the time, there's no shortcuts to greatness, there's no shortcuts to success, there's no shortcuts to a good marriage, there's no shortcuts to being a good parent, there's no shortcuts. It's the hard way is the only way. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, the way that I think of it is that when I start to experience things that feel like suffering, I'm realizing that my feet are on the proper path. You know what I'm saying? We have examples all throughout history, even in the Bible. The people who went through it are the people who ended up hitting whatever target was set out for them. You know what I'm saying? Jesus could not have had the impact that he had on the world and history and religion and spirituality and all these other things if he did not have the suffering that he had. He may have been impactful for a season or for a time, but 2,000 years without suffering, without him going through that we all have read and know the story of and can quote it by heart and all these kind of things, the reason why is because it was such a graphic moment of suffering. If he didn't go through that, the impact would not be there. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Job, we y'all just got done talking about Job. Job's story would not even be around if it was not for the level of suffering that he endured to receive whatever he received at the end, and his perspective while he was suffering. We talked about Job's friends. Job's friends were inviting more despair. Job's wife inviting more despair.
Very good.
Job's perspective was, though he slay me, I still have faith. I still trust. That's understanding that this suffering is the path to something greater, even though you can't see it, because obviously he had no idea what was coming next. All of my children are gone. I'm sick in my body. My wife is crazy, or, whatever else it might be. Job realized that this suffering is the key. It's the way. It's the path to get to whatever is out there for me, so to speak. Whatever God has for me, if you want to use those terms. You see what I'm saying?
Very good.
And so that's the way, like all suffering, I view it that way. Even physical suffering, that may lead to death at some point. We've all had loved ones who've died from cancer and heart disease and things like that are physical ailments and suffering. But imagine a person that has a suffering like that has an epiphany and grows within themselves spiritually to new heights because they're in this suffering and they've found a new way to view life. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And so even in that suffering, there is a possibility for that suffering, if you look at it correctly.
That's it.
Correctly is a absolute word. Maybe not correctly, but if you look at it in a certain way, then you can find the path. I feel like I'm rambling.
You could.
But yeah, if you look at it in a certain way, then you can find a path. Okay.
I love that, man.
I'm off.
No, you good. No, so it's funny because G and I was just talking about Job earlier, and I don't. Hopefully, we don't stray off the path with this, but and get too controversial concerning it. But I was thinking, have we created a limitation believing that all the sons of God came before God, and Satan was there, and God asked the question, where were you, Satan? And he said, going to and fro through the earth and whatnot, right? And I was thinking to myself, like, and I'm being very careful with this, right? Have we created a limitation within ourselves that's not happened within us?
That what has not happened?
That event doesn't happen daily and all the time within us. Is that not a story that God is using as in the natural form to explain a spiritual event that's happened in all of us? even though it happened to Job for real, because I believe Job was a real individual, but the starter moment of suffering, the starter moment of the afflictions and different things like that, is a story telling that that same thing happens to all of us spiritually. You know what I'm saying?
You mean that the house of cards falls down and we got to start over? You mean, like, help me understand what you mean.
Like I said, maybe I don't want to be real controversial, but I just, what if that story is an example of explaining a process that happens to all mankind?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
But God in the experience is trying to give us a starter point of suffering, right? That there's a battle going on within us, in our mindset. Because even though he was afflicted physically, right, I think more of the impact is the mental.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So like a lot of times it is, as a man thinketh, so he is, right? A lot of times it's the mental impact that actually shapes our physical output in some type of way. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. I agree. And that's the in that story. And obviously, you know, there are some people who believe Job is a fictional character and that story was meant to teach a lesson. But however you approach it,
Right.
whether it was a real account of real events or whether it was a fable that was meant to teach a lesson, however it's approached, the fact of the matter is that there was a choice that was made.
That's it.
Job had one perspective and his wife represented a different perspective. There's despair on one side and then there's hope on the other. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Despair says, I give up. You know, the quote unquote curse God and die.
Right.
That's I give up. That's despair. That's desperation. But hope says, no matter what I'm dealing with, I know that something comes after this. Yeah. I still trust that even if I die in this, that I'll experience some level of growth or some level of progress or some reward that will come from this suffering.
Right.
That's hope versus despair. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And so at every turn, every problem, every issue, every challenge, there's a choice that's made within us. And that's, I think that I'm assuming that's what you're trying to touch on. Yeah. And that's the way I view it. I mean, it's I'm going to say this. It's as simple as a choice. Obviously, you know, it's not simple. It's not easy to make that choice, but it's as simple as a choice that says, I'm going to choose to do this or I'm going to choose to that. Now, that choice may not be easy to make because, you know, a lot of people, it's hard for a lot of us to even see past our nose, let alone see in the future. You know what I'm saying? Or have hope for the future. Yeah. But at the end of the day, whatever you choose starts to shape your reality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's funny that you said that because I was thinking about our last conversation. Our last word was consequences. Like, so whatever you choose is going to bring forth the consequence. And we look at consequences as we end up finding out that there's consequences that's good and bad, right? Consequence is just an outcome. It's just an output, right? It's a action that happens after a decision. It follows, right? It follows, right? So I was thinking about going back to what you said, like the hope and what was the other word? Despair. So you have the despair and the hope. And I think that what we were talking about earlier about the despair, once you, and you said correctly, is that absolute, you didn't want to use the word, but I think it's about maturity. I think once you understand that despair can be a catalyst for growth if we use it properly, right? And I think a lot of times we don't even get to that finish line because that despair takes over, right? You know what I'm saying? And then once
it says
again,
there's nothing left for me.
It's nothing, and then
there's no way that this can get any worse. That's what despair is.
Let me think about that for a second, bro.
No way it can get any better.
Yeah.
Hold on, man.
Worse or better. Like, this is as bad as anybody has ever been. Like, you know, we start to compare ourselves or think that that we're alone in our suffering and that nobody else has experienced anything like this. Nobody else has. There's no way you can understand me, Ethan, Gary. You know what I'm saying? That's what despair says. Nobody has ever had 17 children and the house fell in on them and all the cattle died and then they got boils and then nobody's ever dealt with that. Yeah. That's what despair says. Despair says I'm alone, that my suffering is unique, and that there's no way that it can get either worse or better. You know what I'm saying?
So what's cool about the story, see, the thing is I have these moments as well when I believe God deals with me, right? And it's just like I believe God deals with all of us, right? Right? You know, and I think that one of the moments in Job's life was a question that God gave him. He was like, where were you when I created the heavens and the earth? Like, you know what I'm saying? Where were you when I made all these things? Those are those real moments that enter in your head and say, you say to yourself, like, okay, let me take a step back and reevaluate a couple of things. I love
exactly right.
I love the word that was used earlier. I can't remember if it was from you, Mike, or it was you, Gary, when you said you grade yourself. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that we don't do well enough is examine ourselves. Mm-hmm. I think when things are going good, there is no self-reflection. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So when suffering comes, that is the time. You know what I'm saying? So like no, we should always be examining ourselves, self-reflection, and getting better. You know, with situations. That's what I want to say.
100%. A friend of mine, I was having a conversation. I like the fact that you brought up the point where, the where were you when I put the stars in the sky?
Yeah.
To me, that says two words. And I had a friend that hit me with this about a week or so ago, this phrase, and I've been using it almost daily. Mm-hmm. Zoom out. Mm-hmm. Zoom out. Mm-hmm. Look at the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
That's it, man.
Absolutely.
Think of it in the grandest of schemes. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And realize, number one, how insignificant your little problem is. Mm-hmm. And that might be a little bit reductive, but what I'm saying is like, there's no way this is not going to be received well. The thoughts and opinions expressed on the Elected Words podcast are those of the individuals sharing those opinions, and not necessarily those of our network or YouTube or Let Your Words Count. All right,
a little disclaimer.
There is no way that anything that we can possibly go through, and think of all of the atrocities that human beings have inflicted on each other throughout history. There is not a single thing.
Uh-oh.
There's not a single bit of suffering that
has not been experienced by somebody else
that is unique. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's not a bit of it.
Yeah.
There's none of it that's unique. And the reason why that's critical to know or to acknowledge, to me, this is my thought and opinion, the reason why that's critical to acknowledge is because it allows us to have camaraderie in our suffering. I'm not suffering by myself because I know I'm not the only person that's lost something. I know I'm not the only person that's ever cried before. I know I'm not the only person that has, lost everything all at one time, or that's gone through cancer or diabetes or heart disease or some sort of mental malfunction or it's been happening since the dawn of time, the dawn of humanity at least. And so every bit of suffering, you can find brotherhood in that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You can realize, okay, so, and it goes back to what I was saying a moment ago, that despair isolates you. Mm-hmm. Despair makes you feel like there's nobody else that could possibly understand where I'm coming from, because who could have gone through this and still lived through it? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When in reality, it's been happening for a long, long time to people all over the globe. And so if we allow ourselves to remember that, then we can, even if it's not something where we go and, try to reach out and connect to people, because sometimes that can be just as traumatizing as experiencing, you know what I'm saying? You get two people in a room and both of them want to self-harm. That's a bad dude. You know what I'm saying? But realizing that,
I love what you're saying, bro.
It's important to me. It's important to me because I've suffered through the loss of people who are dear to me, who experienced despair and never found hope in this lifetime. And I know we've all experienced that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so instead of feeling that isolation, we have the choice to remember that there is nothing that is unique to us. There's nothing new under the sun. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody else has gone through it, you can believe that there was somebody at some point who lived through it and got over it and moved on and had a great life. Right. Not everybody that's gone through what you've gone through has, been desperate or feeling in despair for their entire lives until this life was over.
Mm-hmm. There was a word you threw out is you said camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
I believe that that's a very good word to say. It's a form of fellowship,
Yes.
right? There's a fellowship in the sufferings, right? I think that's even scripture. Paul talks about
Yeah.
the fact that I may know him and, power of his resurrection, fellowship his sufferings, be made conformable unto his death, right? So it's a lot of the, I hate, I think the way you bring up scripture, a lot of times I think we look at it wrong in many ways, because there is a sense of despair when you read scriptures, when you talk about living righteously, right? The kingdom of God suffers violence and the violent take it by force. I mean, there's a lot of a suffering aspect, but I think Jesus was trying to approach the matter about it's not avoidable. You know what I'm saying? But he was telling him, take of me. You know what I'm saying? My yoke is easy, my burden is light. So I think that there is a way within fellowship of that despair where I think we all said this earlier about growing, like that isolation, you will be seen when I believe you mean something to God, and I believe that we all mean something to somebody. In the very moment that we lose, we're in a pity party or whatnot.
A pity party.
Yeah, we have a pity party. Then we're losing sight of what's important.
Yeah.
And I love you said zoom out.
Yeah, zoom out. I've been saying that
I
job
love
every
that. Dude,
day,
I
bro.
love that because but we have to realize when you look at that bigger picture, you have to realize you don't have to. It's your choice, but I choose to realize that it's not about me, but it's the moment in time where I can be of value to someone. Even in my suffering, I've been training my mind lately about suffering, and the more we all grow by letting our words count, because we're going to grow. You're going to get there's going to be a component of enemies that you might grow. There's a scripture that says, "He that increases in knowledge increases in sorrow." Right? Yeah. It's going to happen, right? Why is it sorrowful when I'm getting better? Because there's something that's going to combat that don't like to see you become a light, right? But suffering, like you said earlier, is like when you talk about despair, those are the moments where life happens. That's when the light bulb comes on. You know what I'm saying? Like when you come to when you, I don't know if I'm saying it right. The moment of giving up, in those moments, you are missing out of opportunities of your wildest dreams when a person is in despair. Because I feel like I'm running on. I'm gonna just stop right there. I just think,
you good, bro.
Yeah, I just think that when you're challenged, you have to come to a point where you have to examine yourself and say, what do you want to become? I think G said that earlier in the episode about what are you becoming in this despair. Yeah, it's that's all I'm gonna say. It's so much in my mind with this word, because I remember before we even started the episode, I was saying, man, it's a deep word, man.
Yeah. Like, it's a lot to it. It's a lot to consider.
Go ahead, G. You had something. I see you writing a whole lot.
Remember the Jim Carrey on what movie was that? Dang, what movie was that? Where he was God. What was it? Bruce Almighty. Remember he was like, that's what G was doing while he was talking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, boy.
Furiously.
Just I'm trying to. This is why I said that's like I think we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
This is not gonna be a one and done word. Just so
we
get
come
ready
back
for
to
it.
it.
We're gonna have to come back and touch on this again, because physical suffering sometimes we can't do anything about.
The camera.
Especially when it's at the hands of another individual, another human being.
Yeah.
Okay, start over. I'm sorry.
Physical suffering, whether it's a health issue or at the hands of another human being. This is why I was saying I don't put that in the same category as the kind of suffering that I think has a lesson and you can pull something positive from. you can still pull something positive when you go through some kind of physical suffering as well. But the other kind of suffering that we go through, I think has we can figure out ways to lessen that non-physical suffering. Maybe not to the point of where we feel like it's completely gone, but what I was saying earlier, like when you're going through suffering, that's not physical, and you stop and you perform that introspection. You let suffering be that mirror, and you find out what are the desires, the cravings, or the attachments that's making your suffering difficult at that time, or making suffering appear at all at that time. When you start to evaluate and understand what those things are, and if you find yourself capable of letting those desires, cravings, and attachments go, I think that's the path to lessening the non-physical suffering. Again, maybe not to the point that we ever find it completely gone, but that's the thing. That's my approach. What I've been working on anyway, what I've been trying to work on is when you start going through suffering, something that you perceive as suffering, what is it that I desire, crave, or I'm attached to that I'm feeling like I'm suffering because I'm not there right now? And asking yourself, is that thing that I'm desiring, craving, or attached to necessary? Is it part of the illusion? Is it something that's going to help me grow? Is it something that I need? Or is it just something that I want for whatever other nonsensical reason? But I think trying to come to understand those things as I'm going through non-physical kind of suffering, that's where I take the time that I'm experiencing whatever thing I feel like I'm suffering through, and try to say, well, I want to use this as a teaching moment, because understanding what you can and can't control when you face anything is of the utmost importance. And again, you can always control your response and how you react to something.
Yeah, I agree.
So suffering is there. When it comes, boom, that's fine. It's here. For me, what I've been trying to put myself in the mindset of and in the habit of lately is, okay, this thing feels uncomfortable. Understanding me why it feels uncomfortable. And in that process, I found that I can reduce the amount of suffering that I'm going through if I start to dig down into what am I desiring, craving, attached to, or whatever that's causing the suffering, and is it something that I can let go? Is it something I can do without, or is it misguided or a misdirected attachment in some way? And again, maybe the answer isn't always going to be something that, you can do without it, but when you look at it, is it essential for life or essential to whatever purpose we found or hope we found? A lot of times you'll find it's not connected to one of those things that give our lives true meaning and purpose.
Can you describe what those moments look like, if you're willing to do so? Can you describe what those moments look like when you are in that introspection? Because, and the reason why I ask is because it's easy for us to say, well, this is what I say to myself, or this is what I ask myself, or this is what, but you have to be in a certain mind frame to even get to the point where you're asking yourself and being introspective and finding a way to be as honest as possible about where your head is. How do you get to that point? What does your practice look like? Is it just, driving in a car on the way to work, or is it just like you set aside time? Do you do it in a shower? Like, what does that look like? And the reason why I ask more specifically is because there may be somebody that is hearing this now or will hear it in the future that may look at you and say, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to even get started with figuring out what questions to ask myself, or I don't have enough time in my day to, I don't know how to, you know what I'm saying? So I think if you share, and, maybe we all can share, I don't know, but you mentioned it, so I'm asking you, how does that look? Whatever you're willing to share, because obviously that's an intimate, private moment within yourself. So any part of it that you're willing to share,
if it's something that helps people,
maybe helpful.
I don't mind. I'm just trying to think of what's the kind of example that's gonna hit home, because
you don't have to like tell us what you're wearing or anything.
So It's a couple of things, and it comes from going through things and finding myself in despair, realizing how uncomfortable it is and undesirable it is, and deciding that I want to experience life differently.
So it starts with a decision in yourself, or recognition first.
Recognition. I'm suffering. I'm going through something. This is not making me happy. This is not enjoyable.
Okay.
I'm there. And if it's something that I can control, then then the first lesson is, how do I not get here again by my actions? Mm-hmm. If it's something that you can't, okay, I'm finding myself going through this. What about this is uncomfortable? I mean, it is, again, I've been trying to apply this throughout a lot of other places in my life, because we're all always on a journey, right? And I'm trying not to be all long-winded with it.
You're good, bro.
It's a matter of just deciding that this is not a comfortable space. This is not where I want to be, and what steps can I take to make sure I'm not here again? That I'm not going to be just subject to the wind blew this way. All of a sudden, I'm having a bad day. This thing that I can't control didn't go the way I wanted it to. Now I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm bitter, I'm hurt, whatever the case is, and deciding that I'm tired of letting external situations determine my peace. So having that mindset, seeking out what things can I do to take control back into my own hands as much as I'm able to decide when it's time for me to allow something to bother me versus not. So you all know, and again, a couple examples, you all know that, just even career-wise, I made a couple of steps a couple years ago. And what I thought the journey was going to look like when I made that decision versus the things that I've suffered, perceptively suffered, the things that I went through, that I can look at certain aspects and say, you didn't suffer. Mm-hmm. But I also know the way my mindset was when I got to certain places in this journey. I'm looking retrospectively like you didn't really suffer, because I know how bad I felt going through certain phases, because I had an expectation or a desire or an attachment to something that I thought was so important and thought was this pinnacle of this whatever important thing in my life, that it took me going through, getting out of that state and looking back to realize it wasn't as important as I thought. And my suffering came because I was clinging on to something that I either didn't need, didn't understand, was not part of the goal, or was wanting for reasons that aren't necessary. So it can, it's just, first, I don't want to be, carried about with every which way the wind blows and have all these external influences take my peace, and then wanting to kind of figure out, well, how do I get myself out of that? And that's what I'm saying. That review process has got me to where when I realize I'm going through something that feels uncomfortable, I want to understand why, because if it's something I can change and not make it a suffering event by adjusting the way I'm looking at things, especially my expectations of something, I'd rather do that and understand if it's something I can let go it's causing me suffering because I want this notepad. I really, really want this notepad. And if you try to come and take it from me and all of a sudden I'm mad because you have the notepad that I wanted, it's a notepad. Okay, I write something on, I could write it on the computer, I could write another notepad, I could do any other thing, but because I want this notepad so bad and you snatched it from me, I'm angry with you, I'm bitter, why is God not let me have a notepad? All these things where it's like, okay, but is that really, really essential to life? When you look at the list of what's really essential to life,
when you zoom out,
you know what I mean? You realize that a lot of the things we're attaching to, we're causing our own suffering because I want this thing so bad. Yes. And ultimately, it's just some fantasy illusionary desire that says I have to have this thing when I really don't. So when we can figure out a way to avoid that, and even then when it's something physical, because again, you guys know there's been some physical health issues I've been dealing with in the past couple of months. And that condition puts me in a place where I can't do anything but sit and think. Mm-hmm. and in that, and it's a persistent pain kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And even in going through that, I used to, especially because what the condition is called and the name that it used to have, I've decided that instead of sitting there and just wallowing and feeling self-pity for being in pain for hours on end that nothing can touch, I've decided to try to use that as like a time to start reflecting and asking again those same questions, like, what can I be doing differently in my life? Not looking for some divine meanings in a daily migraine kind of thing, right? But looking for what can I do different in my life? How can I adjust the way I'm approaching things? How can I adjust my expectations so that I can have control of my peace and again, avoid despair by intent and not just find myself, life hit me with this situation, all of a sudden I have no hope. I think we have more control, more agency over that than what we give ourselves credit for a lot of times. I hope that made sense.
It does.
Yeah,
It does, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap, it starts with a realization and an acknowledgement that something in life is making you uncomfortable. And then you find time. Now, not all of us have, not all of us have mandatory time where we got to sit down and be still for, hours or days on end. But I'll share so I'll take it from that point of the realization and acknowledgement that something is making me uncomfortable and share, some of my practice. So for me, I intentionally take time to be by myself, and I do what the young kids call raw dogging, which is, I know it's crazy, but what it is I separate myself from electronics, from social media. It's crazy. That's a wild name, ain't it? But it's a
different use for that word. And we can
yeah. It's totally different from the 80s and 90s, bro. I'll tell you. But anyway, that's what the kids call it. It's essentially separating our. Ethan cracking.
Where's the camera control? Go ahead, man.
It's essentially separating myself from any distractions. So social media, phone, even music. And y'all know how I am about my music. Separating myself. A lot of times for me personally, and this just happens to work for me, I'll go for a walk. Whether that's just around my neighborhood or I drive to some trail or something and just walk around and I spend time just thinking about, number one, where I am in life. I try my best to do that zoom out thing to think about it in a more broad perspective that says, whatever I'm dealing with is happening in this moment. Does it necessarily have to follow me for the rest of my life? Odds are that's a no.
I love it.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
And even if it does, however long it follows me or sticks with me, whatever path that I'm on that is causing discomfort or suffering in this case, what, like you said, what can I take away from this? How am I growing in this? First of all, am I growing? Because I could be stagnant and that makes suffering last indefinitely. But if I am growing and if I'm real, I can take a moment and examine that growth. And I realize that this is not something that everybody can just pick up right off the bat. There are some people who have never practiced the moment of silence in their lives. And I understand that, intentionally taking an hour or something to be completely free of distractions is not something that everybody is going to be able to dive into. I got it. What I can do, and one of the ways that I started, and I've shared this with you guys over the years, one of the ways that I started was just taking 2 or 3 minutes and finding things to be grateful for. Because it's an amazing phenomenon when you start to list things, not even physically on paper or, typing them up. When you start to list things that you're thankful for, you'll realize that the list never ends.
That's right.
Never ends.
That's right.
I don't care how dark of a place you're in. If you start to think about things that you either are grateful for or can be grateful for, even if you're not feeling particularly grateful, the list is endless.
Right.
We grew up singing songs, Count Your Many Blessings and all, you know what I mean? And that's a real thing. Like if you start to try to count your blessings, you'll run out of numbers before you run out of blessings.
Absolutely right.
You're alive on this earth and there are so many things to be thankful for. Now, I'm trying to find balance with how I'm saying this because I'm saying it from my own perspective and I've come to the realization of this, but there are some people who don't feel like they have very many things to be thankful for. And so this is why I say the way that I started before I realized or before I came to the conclusion for myself of how bountiful blessings are, I would just take a minute. Let's see if I can get through 5. Let's see if I can think of 5 things within the next 2 minutes that I'm genuinely thankful for, whether that's the love of my family, whether that's the fact that my brain is working okay, whether that's the fact that I can get up and walk around this room. That's a blessing. Those are things that, and not to necessarily compare, but those are things that not everybody in this world is blessed with.
For sure.
You know? And so I'm thankful for each of those things. I'm thankful that I live in a place where I can drink clean water. That's a blessing because there's a whole giant populations of people on this earth that can't.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
I'm thankful that I live in a place where I can practice whatever religion or belief system that I have with impunity. And I don't have to necessarily hide. I met a gentleman not too long. This is off the subject, but I feel like it's interesting. I met a gentleman. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I met a guy from Russia, and he was older than me, and he grew up in the Soviet era of Russia, and he grew up Christian. Apparently, Soviet era Russia was, I believe, atheistic. It was an atheistic culture, and so Christians had to hide underground. Now, we have heard about that in church growing up and things like that, but it feels like that was 2,000 years ago, right?
Right.
That junk was just happening when we were alive. You see what I'm saying? And so to grow up in a place, regardless of what you believe, to grow up in a place, and this is just another thing that I'm thankful for, and I'm just giving examples of how quickly these things can come up. Like, that where I can believe and practice and worship however I feel, whatever I believe. There are Satanists in our country. We got Scientology. We got Christianity. We got the Israel guys. We got the Muslims. We got this and that and Buddhism and that. And they're all coexisting together, you know, to one degree or another.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that there's no mass persecution that will suppress you from being able to believe what you want. That's a blessing.
Yes, it is.
You know what I'm saying? And that's just one of an infinite number. I'm sorry that I got off on that particular tangent, but I'm extremely thankful for that one in particular. But anyway, so that would be my first approach. Obviously, that may not be a cure-all for everybody, but it's one step. You mentioned earlier about being at rock bottom. Being at rock bottom means that you're able to build a foundation from where you are. You don't even necessarily have to build straight up. It don't got to be Legos one on top of another. You can build out to build a strong base and then build up.
For sure.
But the thing is, what's that?
Which you should do.
Absolutely. The thing is that every little piece, every piece of the puzzle matters. If you can find 5 things that you can be thankful for, I guarantee you can find 10. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If you realize that you're not by yourself in your suffering, then I guarantee you can lose a portion of that loneliness that feels like you're isolated with your suffering. Every little piece of that puzzle adds up to start building a foundation. And again, I am not an expert on this subject, but these are the things that I've learned as I've gone through my own suffering and moments of despair. And I live my life today, thankfully so, as somebody who is able to see a bright perspective in most things. Like Ethan just said, I just shared something, that most people would be devastated by that happened in my own life. And I smile. You know what I mean? I have not a sense of despair, of fear, none of that. You know what I'm saying?
That's awesome.
Not even a little bit. And the reason why is because I've trained my mind to zoom out in every situation. I've trained my mind to find the way. Number one, I've trained my faith, which is incredibly important in this particular situation. But yeah, I don't want to keep rambling.
You're good.
But yeah. And finding a way to find things that we're thankful for, find that community, or understand that there is a community of people who are suffering, and that each of us are suffering something. Every single person, no matter what their life looks like, whether they're in your face every day or whether you only know them from social media, every single one of us is dealing with something that is a challenge. Every one of us, and it's never going to change.
It's true.
Every human, what's the scripture say? A man born of a woman is only of a few days, and those days are full of trouble. But think about how daunting that sounds when compared to the reality that life is so beautiful. Yeah, the trouble is there, but I don't have to look at it as trouble. I can look at it as something. Yeah, this is a challenge. This is something that is going to carry me to whatever comes next. Okay, I'm done. I talked a lot.
That's good.
No, that's really good. Very good. I love it, Mike. I think that key point you kind of finished on of thankfulness is that will be the word to, or the action. I don't want to just use it as a word, but an action to combat suffering in many, many ways, you know. I think this is like going back to what you said, we might have to do a part 2 later on because it's such a big, because the next time we talk about it, I want to talk about suffering not to show worth.
What you mean?
We'll talk about it next
Okay.
time. We'll hit that.
Find out next time
we'll
on
find
Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. And hey, everyone, G, you got any last words? Or you good?
Just
Go ahead.
one last thing I want to pick up on.
Close out when you do.
Yeah, pray us out.
Close. No, one last thing that you were saying that is also one of those very important questions to ask, right? And I think questions are a very important way to get through life and for our growth and evolution and everything else. But we're talking about, like, you know, what things am I attached to, desiring, craving that maybe I don't need? What things are we appreciative of? How do we want to come out of this suffering or endure it, or what do we want to be different? But you mentioned a couple of the other very important questions is, how does this serve me and how can I grow from this? And whether it's realizing something you're attached to, whether it's something you're suffering from, even if it's something that's good that's there, or any number of things, asking that question, is this serving me or is this helping me grow, or how can I choose and decide to grow from whatever this thing is that I'm going through or facing right now are important questions, because that's another thing I think that can instill hope, is when you can see growth, when you can see that I'm different, hopefully better than I was yesterday, last year, or whatever. That can give somebody hope that, okay, it's not going to always be as dark as it was. I wasn't expecting to come out of that. I wasn't expecting to grow past that, to evolve, to be better, to be bigger, whatever. And you can look back and realize I've changed because of some of the things that I've gone through. But that, again, has to be by choice. They're letting some of the things we're going through, finding teachable moments in the things we're going through. That's how I want to say it. And with that, I'm going to shut up. But I just wanted to bring that up because that was a very good question that you brought up that, you know, we hadn't mentioned before. So
Okay.
Right.
I have one final thing to say. I'm
You
sorry
can
that I'm
close.
carrying
keep
it
going,
on.
man.
You close.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm carrying it out. But
I actually got a thought too.
Okay, let's do it.
No, but go ahead.
There's one thing that I think is incredibly important to point out, and that is, even with all that we've shared today, there is no substitute. There is no substitute for, if you are in a desperate situation mentally, emotionally, to seek professional help, to consider that there may be, you got the camera on, zoom in.
Oh, my bad.
I did that earlier. That's how I know. I just did it when G was on. There is no substitute whatsoever for seeking professional help. Because we have to remember that sometimes desperation in the mind can be a chemical imbalance. And in those moments, medicine may be necessary and it may be the right move for that time. I don't want to negate that, because there are holistic approaches, of course, and we've just listed several of them, and just, you know, altering perspectives and things like that. And that's all great.
Right.
But I don't want to negate, and this goes back to the very first thing that we were saying. We want to make sure that we acknowledge the different facets of suffering.
Yes.
There are those who are suffering mentally that, you know, taking an hour to walk in the park is probably not going to be the full solution to your problem. And it may be a situation where you need to, you know, seek that professional help. And there's nothing wrong with it.
It's not.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Not at all.
When you get a I started to say something really inappropriate. when you get a physical ailment, you go to the doctor.
Right.
If you find a lump somewhere on your body, you're going to go to the doctor.
Right.
If you find that something in your mind and the way that you think is consistently triggered or off or somehow imbalanced, you need to go to the doctor.
Yes.
You need to go to the doctor, even if they end up telling you, "Oh yeah, you're fine. You probably just need to chill and get, you know, take some ZQuil and go to sleep, or take a walk in the park." There is the possibility that they may tell you, "Hey, we're gonna give you something to help with that," and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
That's right.
At all.
That's right.
I can't stress that enough. It's so important to know that there's nothing weak about getting help when you need help.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what I
Absolutely
want to say.
Yeah, one thing I want to add with that, I do always say this is when you do seek out for help, at least ask the doctor, what is my exit strategy?
Yeah, right.
That will be another thing too. Like, do I need to live on this thing for the rest of my life? Because no one wants to be living on pills for the rest of their life.
Right, but if you do need to,
yeah.
go ahead. I'm not checking over.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, if you do need to, it's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I know it's nothing wrong with it, but for that person or whatever case, because I wouldn't want to do it, and I understand some people will have to do that, right? You know what I'm saying? But at least ask the question, what is the exit strategy? You know what I mean? Because a lot of times, man, shoot, if you don't ask that shit,
Yeah.
refill.
Yeah.
How am I
A lot of
supposed to be
times
on
it'll
this
come
thing,
along.
man?
A lot of times it'll come along with visits to therapists or clinical psychologists, things like that, that will help you to create coping mechanisms while you're medicated, so that when you are not or lesser medicated, you'll have a way to deal with whatever those.
Yeah.
Wow, excuse me.
Look at that.
You have a way to deal with those thoughts, emotions, and mental processes.
I agree with that. Man. Absolutely.
And by the way, I see the comment too. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate you, sis. Love you.
Yeah, she said great, Joe. Great show, you guys.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to sign out, y'all. It was a great show, y'all. Suffering, we're going to try to touch back on this again another time. This is such a big topic. I believe
Not too
that
soon, though. It's sad.
there's right. We'll take a break. It is, actually.
We got to talk about rainbows next time.
I know.
Unicorns or something.
But it's
Right.
it's you, like you said, it's a realization to it, right? You know what I'm saying? I think that that's something that we can't ignore. If you try to ignore, then you're going to be fooled by it. That's why you got to use suffering as a tool for growth, if the best you possibly can, if possible, and and that's all I'm going to say. I'm done anyway. This is Let Your Words Count. We're signing out. My name is Ethan Merriweather. This is Gary Gann and Michael Wilson. We are signing out. God
Peace,
bless
y'all.
you.
Love you.
Here they go. Boom,
Cycling.
boom, 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 boom.
All right, man.
God bless you.
Later, y'all.